Talk to me, Majestic talks. Come and talk to me. Talk to me, Majestic talks. Come and talk to me. Majestic talks. Come and talk to me.
Hello there. Welcome to the Majestic Talk Show. I'm your host, Latasha Morgan, certified Christian life coach, certified professional life coach, board certified master Christian mental health coach, and a whole lot of other goodies, y'all. This is season 5, and this year our theme is how slavery affects our mental health today. Today, we're going to be talking about breaking the cycle, healing from the trauma of absent fathers. We have Alisha Bridges today as a guest and Clover Johnson as our other guest today. Alisha is a patient advocate and an author, while Clover Johnson is a co-parenting coach. Let's welcome both of them to the stage today. Hello, Alisha. How are you?
I'm great. So happy to be here to have this conversation with you.
And hello, Clover. Welcome to both of you. Welcome to the Majestic Talk Show. It's so great to have you here today. Two beautiful Black women on the show with me today. Black girl power. Anyway,
It's a pleasure to be here.
it sure is a pleasure to have you both here. Alisha, before we get into the topic for today, will you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Yes, so my name is Alisha Bridges. I am the author of Dig Deeper, a 21-week guide to self-discovery through plants, where I talk about healing emotional and childhood trauma through that of plants. And I'm also a psoriasis and chronic illness patient advocate.
Clover, tell us about yourself.
Okay, so I am a co-parenting coach. I support single and divorced moms who, of course, you've been through separation and divorce, but you have had children and you are no longer in a romantic relationship with your partner. So that self-confidence has been shot, and now you have to regain your self-confidence, gain self-empowerment to navigate difficult co-parenting successfully without acrimony. So
All right.
I offer a 90-day program that caters to that demographic. It is my Heal, Grow, and Thrive method. It's the same 3 pillars that I used to recover from the trauma of breakup, to raise my children from infancy to university. And there was a lot of what I call low to no co-parenting, meaning that there was not regular contact or responsibility with dad.
Okay, so both of you are qualified to be on this show today to help people heal from the absentee father, the trauma of absentee fathers, because there are a lot of people out there that don't know who their father is. And that's sad, because I come from a home where both of my parents were there. I was raised by both of my parents. My dad didn't die until I was in my 20s, and my mother died recently, so 2 years ago. So I had both parents in the home, and it was an amazing experience. But I never could understand how a father could leave his children and not be in their lives. I couldn't understand that. My dad would say, I didn't spend enough time with y'all. I'm so sorry. I don't think I spent enough time with you because I was working. I mean, what did he want to do? Spend all day with us, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? No. So he had to work, but he was always there. If I was sick, it wasn't my mother that took care of me. She didn't do, it wasn't her. He would jump at the chance to do it. When I was afraid of the dark and stuff, because I was raised in the church, when I was afraid of the dark and stuff, you know who would come and whose name I would be calling that night? My dad. My dad, everything. My mom taught me a lot of things too, and most of the things, you know, that mother teaches you. But there were a lot of things that I got from my dad. And so it bothers me that for centuries, since slavery, we've been going through the same cycle of not having fathers in the home. And what people don't get, and you always, everybody wants to talk about Black men not being in the homes and children being raised without a father, and and that Black men should stop doing that. But if we never take care of the root cause of the issue, we'll still have the same problem. Keep going from generation to generation, just as it has already been. And you know, we love to talk about generational curses, but nobody is breaking the cycle. You have to make sure that you pull the thing up by the root. So, how can we do that? First, we need to know the history behind it. So, the historical context of the roots of father absence is that the absentee fathers in the Black community has deep historical roots dating back to the transatlantic slave trade, the 1600s to the 1800s. That's a long time, and we're in 2025. When enslaved Black men were forced to be separated from their families. Under slavery during 1619 to 1865, Black fathers had no legal rights to their wives or children, making it nearly impossible to establish a relationship with them. So during that time, you know, your father may live on one plantation and your mother may live on one plantation, and sometimes you as a child would live on another plantation somewhere else. It may be your parents may be in the north, because let's be clear, the north had slaves as well. Your parents may be in the north and you're in the south, or you may be well, you're somewhere else and they're in another place. Your other brothers and sisters may be in another at another plantation as well, or they may be dead because, of course, you didn't have a long time to live on a plantation, especially in the South. So that's where the separation comes from. We see it in the Reconstruction from in Jim Crow's era from 1865 to 1965, where Black men were often targeted by racist policies, sharecropping debt, and racial violence, keeping them away from their families. We are still seeing the same thing today by welfare policies and economic hardships, with many government assistance programs discourage two-parent households, further straining Black families. And that keeps you in the poverty state as well. So then there's the mass incarceration and the war on drugs, 1980s to the present, where Black men are in prison and have left children to grow up without fathers. That is a problem, like I said, that is continuously going on all of that time. And my question is, why are we just now talking about it? Why hasn't there been someone trying to find the root cause of the problem, so that if people actually want to solve the problem, why aren't they trying to heal people from the inside out?
I think when it comes to healing, that is an individual responsibility. And then if enough people do it collectively, it becomes a thing. So I think us as individuals, and I do this in my own life, where I have had to, one, understand the root cause of some of my insecurities, which was definitely associated with having an absent father or a father who was inconsistent. Had to figure out that root. Then I had to do the work to unpack that, to even understand the reasons I was feeling that way was because of that. And then do the work to heal, to find grace, compassion, even for your parents, because they have a story as well. And you heal, you get to a better point, and then you start sharing that with your friends and family. I have inspired my aunt, who's 60 now, to go to therapy, and she just did it for the first time 3 years ago. I have friends in a group chat where we're always exchanging information about conversations with our therapists. So I really think it starts individually, and then based on that, you start to share that with other people, and it's almost like a seed. You plant a seed and it starts to grow. You propagate what you've learned, and you give it to other people, and that's how it starts to become a thing. And I think we just now, as a community, started taking mental health seriously. We started to just now understand what anxiety is and how our past has really influenced our mental health and our relationships with others. So I think that's why it's taking so long. It's a lot of different factors that come into play, especially on the side where, you know, we're marginalized, and we at one point couldn't even afford stuff like that. Like, to be able to go to therapy and to unpack some stuff was a privilege that only people with money could have access to. So there's a lot of factors to it.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Can I add to what you have said about plantation life? Well, you talk about in the U.S. Movement from the north to the south, but how about the TTA and the Caribbean? They went to different islands. Not only that, on the TTA, transatlantic trading Africans, many of the cargo, human cargo, were thrown overboard, whether from illness, there was nobody to attend to them, they were weighing down the ship, it was going to be some communal illness that could spread. So even before they got to the destination, many of them were dead fathers, right? And there were pregnant women on that ship who left the Gold Coast and wherever else. And when they came here, they gave birth. So that furthers the whole issue of fragmentation. So the issue of fragmentation, as it relates to family life in that transatlantic trade, it is absolutely huge. It is absolutely huge in terms of the geography of where people ended up, right? You don't know where your mom is, you don't know where your dad is, you don't know where your sibling. So that is absolutely devastating. Furthermore, men were basically, when they got to the plantations, men were considered to be breeders.
Right.
They were considered to be breeders to ensure that there was enough slave labor for the plantation owners. So that they were particularly interested in young, strong, virile men. That was important. So as you got older, your value got less and less. Right? So all of those factors complement what you have already said. So it is a big, big issue in the historical evolution of that process of coming from Africa through the transatlantic trade to the New World, as it was called then. And that includes North America, the Caribbean. So it is a big deal.
Yes, that is so true. I didn't say that, but you are right. That did happen. And not only that, just think about all the children who were born through a slave who a slaveholder slept with or molested or raped. So that's another issue. And sometimes they were sold off just because they were the slaveholder's children. So you're correct. You're right. You're right. There's a lot of that. Also, when they were breeding, guess what? The molestation and all of that comes from that as well, because there were times when the male would be blindfolded. He didn't know who he was having sex with. You know, it could have been his mother, could have been the grandmother, could have been his sister, could have been his aunt, anybody. So that's another issue. There are several different factors, as you said, that contributed to our problem today. So because there are 47% of Black mothers raising children alone today, compared to 21% of all U.S. mothers. That's a lot.
Yeah.
There are 50%, nearly 50% of Black children grow up in a single parent home compared to 20% of white children. That's a lot of children.
Yeah. Overall, it's 1 in 4 families, and in the Black, I think it's about 1 in 2. You are correct. Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. Now, there are slave narratives that actually tells us about the separation of fathers during slavery. So if you read about the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, 1845, he described how he was separated from his mother as an infant and never knew his father. So he was believed to be a white man, likely his enslaver. And Douglass said that I never saw my mother to know her as such more than 4 times in my life. And each of these times was very short in duration and at night. Harriet Jacob, in the Incidents of the Life of a Slave Girl in 1861, said, she wrote about how enslaved fathers had no legal claims to their children, saying the law gave the slaveholder the power to break families at his will, and the Negro father had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. You were considered as nothing. Your marriages were to them null and void. So if you were married to someone on one plantation and you were moved to another one, sometimes you were forced to marry someone else, because in their eyes you were an animal and animals can't get married.
Yeah. Property.
Yeah, you were property. You're correct. So we've talked about what happened then in slavery back in our history. We talked about the statistics of women today in single parent homes today, absentee fathers today. We've also talked about slave narratives, some evidence of what happened during the time of slavery. But what is going on today? Have either one of you experienced the trauma of absentee fathers?
Yes, my own father was not there. He got caught up in the crack epidemic, him and my mother actually. My mom was a lot more present, but my dad didn't have as much support as she did. So while she eventually was able to get herself together, he continued to struggle. And so I really didn't understand. And I was raised by my grandparents. They were both in the home, my grandmother and my grandfather. But even with that, having your father, not having your father still impacts you, even when you have other male influence. And I didn't realize how impacted I was from the absence of my father until after I started going through a separation with my own husband. And we eventually divorced. But it was that moment with that separation that all of these issues that I had not dealt with started to come to surface. So feelings of unworthiness, feelings of not being good enough, feelings of just having to be chose by a man to prove your worth, feelings of dealing with abandonment issues, but it coming up in the form of codependency and not having good boundaries, because that's what you think love is. You want to hold on to something so tight that you don't want to feel abandoned, that you just kind of deal with anything. So all of those issues really impacted my mental health. how I viewed myself, how I navigated the world, especially with men. And then about maybe 3 years ago, my dad was missing for 10 years, didn't know where he was at. And then about 3 years ago, got a phone call and they said, hey, we found your dad. He's been homeless and he's dying of stage 4 lung cancer. So he only had 4 months to live, but I'm honestly grateful for that moment because I was able to have really deep, intimate conversations with my father that gave me a lot of grace for him and what he went through with his mental health, being a man in the Army, being a man from 10 siblings who they had a crazy father themselves. And so talking to him and expressing myself how I felt and then listening to his story, I think really gave us both the peace that we needed before he died. So I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity and that closure to have with my father.
Oh, that's amazing. That's good. That's good. How about you, Clover?
Okay, so one of the greatest gifts I have got in life is the gift of wonderful parents who were married for well over 50, I think 52 or 53 years when my mom died. My parents were committed Christian parents, and we were raised just 2 pillars: faith and family. Commitment to family and commitment to a faith. So that became the bedrock of my adult life as I moved forward. When my marriage broke up, can you imagine the shock that ensued? And it happened at a time when I was in the postpartum period, right? I had just given birth. And little did I know that in less than 3 months, my marriage I would have been separated. So at the time, there was a 4-year-old and basically an infant. And I think people talk about you're going into depression and, those different stages of grief. And I'm sure Alisha will probably agree with me that the stages of grief that you go through in grieving an absentee parent probably is the same way in which I grieve the loss from divorce. And at the same time, I think I was grieving the pain of the absentee father as I saw it showing up for my children. Because imagine I came from a home where my dad gave this stamp of authority, that seal of identity, similar to what Jesus, the Father, said to the Son. This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. That's the way I felt that my father felt about me. So I had a loving, committed father who gave me the stamp of approval. And that is huge. That's what fathers should be and should do. So I saw my father as a hero. And I will say, I remember as a child, nothing could happen. That was my belief as long as my father was around. Nothing could happen to me. Provider, protector, presence, and praise. Right? That is 4 P's. He checked all the boxes. So can you imagine the level of cognitive dissonance that I am going to now face when the father of my children is not showing up? He is irregular in visits, very irregular in the early days, which, to be honest, I did not mind because the children were so young. I didn't want them to be dragged all over the place. I feared for their safety and health, right? Remember, this was a child that was less than 6 months and a 4-year-old. However, as life unfolded, he continued to be irregular. So I could not say he came every Saturday or he came every Sunday and took them for a day or half day. There was nothing like that. But there was intermittent connection. I don't, neither in length, quality, or quantity. I think that that's all questionable.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that it caused my children pain. I remember, as I shared with you off screen, my middle child at the time, who was somewhere between the ages, by this time she was about 10, 11. And she would say to me, almost in tears, Daddy says he's coming for me on the weekend and he never shows up. Why does he do that? And I could feel actually like a dagger through my heart, because I cannot understand, why do you tell a child you are going to do something and you don't do it? You're exacerbating the pain that you know, right? You know there's a void. You know already must be some degree of wounding, because he wasn't a child. He was in his 30s, right? So it was very difficult for me to watch. So I was grieving the loss of the breakup, and much later the divorce, because I didn't get divorced until 5 years later. But I was in pain for my children. And it was at that time when I was comparing the parenting of my dad to what was actually showing up for my children. And I felt that pain so hard. It was devastating for me. Very, very difficult. And so I remember my older daughter saying, by this time she probably was 13, 14. And I think children sort of adjust their sails to meet the wind. I remember she said to me one day, oh, daddy will always be daddy. But what I want to say about all three children, because I had a third child later by another relationship, is that my observation dovetails with what psychologists like I'm just looking at the area. Kevin Lehman talks about depression as one of the major symptoms of the absent father, right? So wherever the daddy problem shows up, wherever daddy does reside, right? So absentee fathers, problems related to absentee fathers, it shows up where daddy does not reside. And depression is one of them. And that cut across all my three children as they went into early adulthood. Because your dad is supposed to give you that stamp of identity. You are mine. You belong to me, right? Ownership. And that is what gives a girl especially this spine of steel. My dad believes in me so much that I know I can do anything or achieve anything, and my dad will be my major cheerleader, right? Traditionally, it's believed that mom is for nurture and caring. I personally don't believe that. I believe that dads can be the very same, but it takes work, it takes effort, and it takes growth, right? And out of my own post-trauma growth, I have learned so much that I would not have learned had I not gone through that season of my life. So I know we let men off the hook for historical reasons. Also, after slavery, then came the world wars and the men went off the wars. And that's a significant factor, again, that caused fatherlessness. Men were supposed to die for their families, right? Die for their countries, for freedom, right? And they did it, and we gave them hero status from that. But they were still missing from home. No fault of their own. Joining the army, especially for Black men, was a way for upward social and economic mobility. It was a way where you could get, skill training, vocational training, become a professional, an airline pilot. So there is an upside and there is a downside. But I also believe what I have learned, and this is what I like to say to all women, because of the family background I was from, I was determined that there was no way, it didn't matter what happened, as long as there was no physical violence, there was no way that I would put a deliberate disconnect in any relationship that their dad wanted to build with them, because I knew from the experience of my own father-daughter relationship that would have been suicidal for them going forward to try and build that relationship. Because at some point, that daddy, one of these psychologists calls it, I think it's the same Kevin Lehman, daddy attention deficit disorder. If your dad is missing and missing for prolonged periods of time going into adulthood, and I'm sure Alisha can talk about this, there's always a hunger as to why, and to build that reconnection, no matter how bad that relationship seemed to have been. You want to connect and you want to see if there can be some repair in it, because you do not want that relationship to end where it's completely sour, because what that is doing is even diminishing your self-worth some more. Right, Alisha? You agree with that? Yeah. Right. So I was never that mother. And that's what I would say to any mother now. It is not your business to put any to do anything that's going to derail your child's relationship with her dad. Her dad is her dad. That child is half of that parent and half of the mother. And there is no mother that can replace a father, and there is no father that can replace a mother. We have distinctly, the way God made us is that dads can learn nurturance in the same way now they have broken barriers and become nurses, carers, social workers, and all of that were traditional women's field. And women from the liberation movement have gone into non-traditional women field of doctors, engineering, and everything. So we have all crossed paths, but we have to recognize the complementarity of the relationship so that our children can grow up in a civil relationship where each parent is a facilitator, that you are not tearing down either parent in front of the child or even behind, right? Because sometimes they pick up body language and all of that. So some of the recommendations, and I'll just share quickly 4 of them that psychologists tell you, is that 1, you must try to live, when you get divorced, separated, try to live 20, 30 kilometers away. No, it shouldn't be more than a 30 to 40 minutes drive, so that children can stay connected to their community. Maybe they are joining a sports club, right? Maybe it's Cubs or Scouts or whatever the community activity. When you pull them away to another state or another country, the children become disconnected from their community, and that further exacerbates their connection to community and connection to the parent who doesn't live with them.
Right.
And so it makes life really hard. And so women over the years, in terms of custody, I will say almost have over the years have a God-given right, the court seat as custodial parents, especially when the children are under 3 years old. And that is okay, but we have to use judgment and good sense of and focus on the needs of our parents, because it's the men that get the fight. The courts give them the fight. And each of us here, I'm sure, knows somebody who the courts have literally torn down, right? To the dads. I have seen it and I've known that the man literally has to fight. And in my own co-parenting journey, I have seen the level of violence. Somebody's awarded 50-50 custody, which is the very best. That's another thing. Go for 50-50 custody. So that's my second point, right? My third point is go for couples counseling. And you are not going for couples counseling because, or should I say, communication counseling. You are not going to communication counseling because you are trying to restore the relationship with your ex. You are going to communication counseling to find the best way to communicate about your child, because there is a way that we all take any form of criticism or recommendation from our ex and we get our backs up. And oftentimes that can be, there can be cause for, and it can be explosive, right? Because we do not many of us take criticism. Would you mind doing it this way for me? It's very rare, or the relationship has to have gone through a couple of years before people get to that point, right? And yes, I talked about 50-50 shared parenting time, that you should live within a certain time frame from each other, so you don't disrupt the community activities of your children and their co-curricular activities, and you don't badmouth and the couple's communication. And you are doing it for your children to maintain civility, to reduce the harm and the tumult that we are accustomed to in the post-divorce or post-breakup era.
Okay.
So,
that's good. That's good. You covered a lot there. You gave some steps that people can take, what they can do to build the relationship back up, even through divorce and separation. Alisha, Clover talked about that feeling of that hunger you have as a girl for your father, a relationship with your father. Can you talk about that? Is that something you experienced?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I really didn't understand that feeling until after the separation and divorce with my ex-husband. And as I started my own journey of understanding where a lot of my actions were coming from, because that's what you kind of start with first. You don't know that there's a problem attached to that until you start evaluating your actions with disappointment. And so I had to start really looking at, why am I passive aggressive? Why do I feel inadequate? Why do I feel like I have to be, and I'm using these terms, I didn't know it in my late 20s. I'm using these terms because I understand now. But it was like, why do I feel like I have to be emotionally manipulative in order to get my needs met? And so I had to really evaluate all of that. And through evaluating that, I just realized that for both of my parents, but we're going to focus on my father, him being absent said so much to my psyche about who I was. And one of the things, and I talk about this in my book, in assessing your childhood trauma, limiting beliefs. And so limited beliefs is something, are ideals that you create in your head, whether it's subconscious or through your experience or maybe what other people are telling you, and you hold on to that belief and that becomes your reality. And so one of the things that it used to wake me out of my sleep sometimes is, if your parents didn't love you enough to stay off of drugs, nobody will ever love you.
That's true.
And that was a focal point in my journey. And I had to really break that down of what that meant and why I was feeling that way. And why I was choosing the people that I was choosing and dealing with stuff that I was dealing with. It all stemmed from that thought, that limiting belief that if my parents could leave me for drugs, why would I expect anybody else to stay?
Yeah. Wow.
And so that was something that I didn't know up until that point played in every aspect of my life, whether it was through my confidence and what I felt like I could achieve, whether it was what I felt like I should accept from men. I didn't have boundaries. You know, I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really necessarily have a focal point of what it means for a man to have this amazing love for the woman in his life. And I'm not talking about romantic. I'm talking about in general, like you spoke about, Miss Clover, of that feeling where you feel like my dad is here for me. You know, I have somebody who has my back. They affirm me. They love me. They protect me. You know, my perspective was this person has chose something else over me. So that means that I am not worthy. And so that is something that I have had to unpack for 10 years with a few different things. If somebody is dealing with it, I'll tell you what I did. One was therapy. That was number one. There's different types of therapy that you can go to that that will address different things. I remember my very first therapist, she had me in there talking to my inner child. And I still do it some days. It's kind of a weird thing, but you almost have to reparent yourself. That's something else that I've had to do. Going into my inner child, telling her in moments where I feel triggered or I'm taking something personal that probably shouldn't be taken personal. Let me talk to my inner child, because it's almost like you go back to your childlike state where you act out in a way that you experience from childhood, because nobody has taught you the proper skills on how to unpack and assess that. So that's one. Number two, I went to Codependence Anonymous support groups. It's similar to NA and AA. It's a 12-step program, but it's for people who have had to deal with unhealthy relationships, especially in childhood. So it teaches you skills on how to assess that, how to unpack it, how to establish boundaries, because many of us who have absent parents do not know what it means to have boundaries, because we just want protection. It don't matter how we get it. So Codependence Anonymous really helped me. And it was a couple of books that really changed my perspective. The Untethered Soul, it really teaches you how to unpack your thoughts and really find your identity outside of what tells you. When I say what the world tells you, not verbally, but through actions. Like my dad was telling me, oh, you're not, this is how I perceived it. Oh, you're not worthy because I'm choosing drugs over you. So learn to unpack those messages. Journaling. One thing I would say about journaling that helped me so much was, over time, when you go back and you read your journal, for me, it was the same story, but a different name. And so I started to see a pattern. And through that pattern, I started to say to myself, you know what? I there's a problem there. Why does this same thing continue to happen, but just with different people? And lastly, meditation, prayer. I think meditation and prayer is a little bit different, because I look at meditation as sitting with God and evaluating my thoughts. Sometimes you just need to sit and you don't take the thoughts personal. That's where I'm at now. But you need to see, what is my thoughts manifesting in my brain? Because sometimes that makes you subconsciously. And then prayer, to me, is the act of actually talking it out with God and working that out. But meditation has absolutely changed my life. In the year before the stuff with my dad, I had dedicated a year of meditation. And I honestly think that was God's way of pre-preparing me for what was up ahead with my father and him being found. So those are some ways that not having my father has impacted me. And then those are ways that I have learned to work through that. And I can say, sitting here before you today, I am healed. That stuff don't bother me anymore. Yeah.
That's good.
Can I just quickly interject on a point you said? That point about recognizing how much, for want of a better word, the ignoring that your father did of you in relation to how you felt in your male-female relationships. That if my daddy couldn't give up drugs for me, who is going to give up anything for me? And I think my eldest daughter, when her marriage broke up, she told me the same thing, that she went to therapy. And in therapy, it was the same kind of feeling. You know, if my dad couldn't be who he should have been for me, why is anybody else? And she said it was surprised because it came out almost spontaneously. Yeah. So once we recognize, as you said, and take the action, we are on the healing journey and we can just keep going till we get to where we need to.
That's
Thank you.
good.
I would also like to say I had to learn grace from my parents.
Mm-hmm.
They had a childhood and they had things that caused them to do what they did. My mom started drugs. She was battling and dealing with her sexuality, not being able to talk through that. And then my dad started because of his own mental health issues and trying to run away. And so once I understood that they too had an inner child that was fighting a battle that nobody could see, I found grace and compassion for them because I realized when you have a baby, when you become a parent, your issues don't go away.
No,
that's true. Mm-hmm.
You're going to pass them on to your kids.
It's compounded.
Go away because you are a parent. We hope they would. We hope that parents would say, you know what, I love my child so much that I'm going to get my stuff together. But that is just not the reality. It's sad. But in my own journey, this is what helped me too. I haven't had any substance abuse issues, but because I was in Codependence Anonymous, sometimes I would sit in on the NA and AA meetings. That was transforming because I got to see the perspective of my parents. I got to understand them in a way that they may not have been able to say themselves because that may be too vulnerable to say to your kids at the time. But the other people's stories of dealing with drugs really helped me to find grace, love, and even respect for my parents in their own journeys, even though it negatively impacted me.
Okay, that is amazing. Yeah, I'm so glad you're on this show today. That was amazing conversation. But for the person, Alisha, that's dealing with feeling like she's not worthy, for that one, for that girl, or for that boy that feels like they are unworthy because their father isn't in the picture. There are some that their mothers aren't in the picture as well. So let's not forget that part. I know this show is about absentee fathers, but the same thing happens with women. So I want you to speak to that person and give them a word of encouragement.
The word of encouragement I would like to say is that you are worthy, you are somebody, and just because somebody else could not see that or they did not have the tools or the means to help you believe that does not mean that it is not true. I would say that you are a child of God and we don't get an opportunity to choose who our parents are. And sometimes our parents aren't necessarily equipped to do what they need to do for us. But thank God that we have the power to do what we need to do for ourselves. So I would encourage them to do the things that I would encourage you to do the things that I mentioned and just know that it takes a lot of work. One of the things I used to say to my therapist all the time is, am I ever going to get over this? I'm tired of going through the same stuff. And she used to always say to me, this is 25 plus years of trauma that you have held on to. Do you think you're going to get rid of it in 2 years, 3 years? No.
Yeah.
So, with yourself and understand it's a learning process. Sometimes you don't take stuff back. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward. And the peace comes quietly. Where you may not notice it all at once, but all of a sudden you'll reflect back on a situation. You'll say to yourself, oh my God, I handled that way different than I would have 3 years ago. And that's when you know the work is finally starting to do its thing. So don't feel discouraged and just know it's going to be a process.
Can I just add a bit to that? A quick bit? Can I just add a quick? Sure.
I have one for you.
Okay.
Okay. So you can add to that, but right after you do, I want you to speak to that father who wants to rebuild a relationship, or maybe he has felt like he can't rebuild that relationship, or has some barriers that's keeping him from rebuilding that relationship with his children. And not only him, I want you to also speak to that mother who's going through that trauma of the absentee father too, because she's going through trauma too of not having that father in her children's life. So speak to those. What encouragement would you give them? And also you can add to what Alisha
Okay.
said. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So first thing, let me speak to mom, because this was how I got through it. I focused on my children first, second, third, fourth, right? Because I had to make sure they were on a pathway. My mother, I'd seen parenting is often caught before it's taught. And I saw my parents, especially my mom, she did the education route and she did the faith route. And that was the route, the two pillars that I took from her and built the foundation. So we have to find someone who has been through our life experience of raising children, a mentor who we respect. And I had tons of those in my community. Some were church people, some were family friends, and the support was just so it was overwhelming. I was never out of support. And you need to have what I call your little kitchen cabinet, your little inner circle of people who have gone through what you have gone through, so they can be your support system. And focus on your own personal growth, your up-leveling and moving you forward. A friend of mine told me this, and I've never forgotten it when my marriage broke up. He said, success is the best form of revenge. And it's true. If you focus on your growth and moving forward and building your skills, you are going to forget about the other person a little more quickly than somebody who is not making any progress. So that's what I would say. Focus on your children, put them on a growth path, and do the same for yourself. Create a life plan. To the dads, I want to say, you do not understand your power and the heroic nature of your leadership. That stop running from bed to home to whatever the dysfunction is that you are indulging in. Focus on your children. They didn't ask to be here, and you can be the hero that you need to be. And that love, that reciprocal love that's going to come from that relationship is going to blow you over and melt your heart. To the children who have gone through different degrees and variations of absentee fatherhood, what I will say to you, hang on to the parent who is moving forward with you. The daddy hunger is not going to leave you, because it is natural to yearn for belonging, and you belong to both parents. But admit your pain. Don't keep shrugging it off and putting it under the rug. You are not like your parents in the sense that many of them didn't have that opportunity or the means. Their socioeconomic backgrounds, their educational level did not. Therapy? What's that? Who goes to that? You understand? So you have to know that their situation was different from yours. Their socioeconomic background, access to mental health support. You have it. They didn't have it. Give yourself permission to grieve. Grieve your childhood memories or lack of it, right? It's not your fault. You are lovable, right? And your dad loves you. He just doesn't know how to express it because he has been dogged by his own demons and will not seek redress or take remedial action. And women will do this much faster than men. It is very hard traditionally for men to seek support and recognize that they have a problem. They take much longer. It is not your fault, right? Replace the lies you have been told with truth. As Alisha said, that you are not worthy. It's the lie from the pit of hell. Go to the scriptures. Find a faith. Go to the scriptures, right? Choose a lifestyle of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not for the person who did you wrong. Forgiveness is for you to release yourself from the baggage and weight of your pain. And as she says, that's when the peace slowly comes. You have to fix that hole in the heart, and that hole in the heart comes from that release that comes from forgiveness. Embrace the relationship with your Heavenly Father. Because, as he says, and I want to quote this one, I think it's Romans 8:15, the Spirit you receive brought about your adoption to sonship, and by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit itself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. We are God's children. You are God's children, right? And you have to remember that. And God is intentional. There are so many scriptures in there where God is intentional on communicating his love for you, just as he communicated his love for his son, Jesus Christ. You are my beloved son, my beloved daughter, in whom I am well pleased. You are lovable and you are loved.
That's amazing, ladies. That was amazing. So before I give my benediction, we only have a few minutes left. So Alisha, tell everyone how they can get in touch with you if they want to work with you.
Yes, so you can find me at Alisha Got Plants. That's ALISHA Got Plants, or Alisha M. Bridges. You can also go to my website at AlishaMBridges.com. And my book, Dig Deeper, a 21-week guide to self-discovery through plants, is on Amazon. It's basically about caring for a plant for 21 weeks. And each week you read a lesson about growth, and it allows you to see growth and process in a tangible way. And it has questions where you're able to assess your childhood and emotional trauma.
Wow, that's amazing. You know what? You should put that in the comments that put your information in the comments and a link to your book, okay? So that they can go to it from there, okay? Miss Clover, I want you to do the same thing. Put your information in the comments as well. I also want you to let us know how people can get in touch with you if they want to work with you.
Okay, I hope I'm putting it in the right place. Well, and let me say it anyway. It's johnston.clover@gmail.com. And I'm on Instagram. I'm more active now on Instagram. So it's Co-Parenting Coach Clover. I also have a Facebook page, my regular profile page. I had a group, but it was hacked and I haven't been able to solve that just yet. So
That's good. That's good. So now, everyone, we have gone over the historical context of trauma of absentee fathers. We've had testimonies of absentee fathers during slavery and testimonies from today. We know what the statistics say. We also have heard encouragement on how we can heal from the trauma of absentee fathers and how parents can build a relationship between the father and the children, even how they can make sure that they don't separate the children or keep them too far away from the other parents so that they have that community for them. We've discussed all of that. So what I want you to get from this show, everyone, is this. You can heal from the trauma. You just have to know where to look. Face whatever it is that you're experiencing in your life. Forgive and let go. That's what we've said today. Seek mental health support in your area. I'm sure there's someone that can assist you. We have two ladies here that can assist you. I can, depending on what it is, because I do purpose. But I want you to get something from this show. I want you to know what your history is. Don't just take our word for it. Go look it up. It's important that you know your history, because if you do not know, or if you forget your history, you're subject to repeat it. You have to know where the signs are and where to look for those signs so that they don't continuously show up in your life. Okay? So you are worthy and there is hope for you. Okay? You can rebuild, fathers, you can rebuild that relationship with your children. Mothers, you can do the same, but you have to be willing to do the work. Thank you, ladies, for being on the show today. I really do appreciate you all being here. And thank you for everyone that's watching today, or even if you watch the replay. Thank you so much for watching the Majestic Talk Show. We'll see you next month for our next show. Thank you. I'm Latasha Morgan, certified Christian life coach, certified professional life coach, board certified master Christian mental health coach, and a whole lot more. We'll see you next week for the Majestic Talk Show. Have a good night. Everybody wave. Tell everybody bye.
Bye.
Talk to me, to me. Majestic talks. Come and talk to me. Talk to me, to me. Majestic talks. Come and talk to me. Majestic talks. Come and talk to me. Talk to me, to me.